I chase awe. That's like, since being unwell, that's kind of been my driving thing of chasing moments that literally leave me in awe. At the time when I was unwell, I didn't care. When I was trying to like recover, there's like psychologists that you can see, and there was like your general treatment and things. I'm like, it just didn't resonate. Like I just felt like I'd rock up and just have a conversation, and it was just like, it just didn't feel like any connection. And when I started exploring a bit more and like just being really curious, like I just felt like I tapped into another realm and something like higher than myself. I don't know what you would call it, but that kind of feeling made me feel connected again, which helped with the depression. And it made me see the world in a different lens. And so when I've been like swimming in like bioluminescence or being like in the canyons where there's glowworms, or those moments that you like cannot even describe what's going on, it like changes your perspective and it makes you feel small and it makes time go away. And there is something really powerful in that. There is something that changes us.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Shit. Okay, so that was a whole other thing. I thought when you said you were going to New Zealand, when you went to New Zealand, I thought it was just for a bit of a holiday.
No. It was like months in the making of just like not frantically, but like literally spending all my time and energy trying to figure it out. Because when I first had the idea, it was like, well, how the heck do I make that happen? Like I don't know a filmmaker. I don't know how on earth I can make something happen that's kind of overseas. Like even the logistics of doing something where you can't necessarily know what's around, and then having a team and making it financially possible. I was like, the idea came to me so clear, and then I'm like, fuck.
Yeah.
Like, how do I make that happen? And so, yeah, those months was literally just like turning an idea that just seemed like up here and far away into like practical things. Like reached out and Sam Gash was like, cool, I'm on board. And the way that we just kind of made the things like the parts work, we were over there and did the expedition.
Oh my God. So you decided to go to New Zealand with this in mind, or was it, I'm going to New Zealand, oh shit, you know what? There's an opportunity to do this, and this.
No, that's why I went over. So it was already kind of planned as like a 10-day expedition.
Oh, wow. All right. Is it one of those, you plan this trip and we're going to make a film and then shit just goes horribly wrong, and then now we have like this whole other documentary about it? Did it go as planned?
Well, I don't think anything ever will go as planned.
Okay, yeah,
but I think it was really nice to know, like we both went into it knowing we're going to have to be making changes as we go. Like we knew things were going to have to be like adapted as we went. And so that was really nice. It wasn't of like, oh my God, what's happened? Like we'd find out like a road's closed or the rivers are too high to cross. And it was like, cool, what's the next? Like what's our plan B? And just like moving it from there. But it was nice because I think the film, because not that it went to plan, but because it happened as what we intended in terms of like doing the 600 or like 500 and something Ks to Queenstown, it allowed us to have like the narratives kind of come through of embracing what it means to be a female on the path. And like Sam's got an amazing journey of like, being a mother, but trying to, carve out time, and us finding the way of like moving that works for us. Because it's hard in a field where it is kind of like either A to B, this is what it's doing. No matter what, this is like the route, the plan, or in a way that's so structured, we're like, well, what happens if we shake it up a little and kind of change the narrative in that kind of endurance space? So it allowed us to speak those things like throughout it.
What when you say shake it up with the narrative, what is the narrative?
Well, I think at least in my perspective, it's obviously I'm not sure what it actually is, but I think since Ned Brockman and that kind of movement of, I see a lot of people just like pushing really hard, like no matter what, I'm just going to go, I'm going to break my body, I'm going to keep going through whatever pain it is. And it's like, well, what happens if you were to take a step back and actually find something that maybe works a little better, and maybe you take a break here and change it here and you actually enjoy it more? And I think as well, there's like a to B kind of mentality, like this is the amount of Ks that we're doing. And I think if you can kind of go beyond that, it's like, well, why does the kilometers matter? Why does the pace matter? Like, and if you can kind of realize like maybe it's because, you want the experience or something. Okay, well then gear it towards that.
Yeah, all right. So, okay, I'm seeing where you're going, and now I'm kind of questioning why I do what it is that I do. Why does the pace matter?
I'd ask that to you.
Okay, yeah, all right. I don't know. Because it's such an arbitrary thing. Completely arbitrary. For me, it was like I've got a goal of setting of doing a sub 4 marathon. And I guess that if you want to work out the pace I need to keep at, is that this what I need to do to be able to maintain that? But then if I'm asking myself, why am I going for a sub 4? The reason being is that the average, right? So it's just to be better than average. And why that matters, I don't know, right? Like, because it shouldn't, because at no other part of running marathons is a competition against other people other than the sub 4. And the sub 4 of me achieving that is just going to it'll just be a realization that I have done a marathon better than average. But why that matters, I don't know.
Yeah, but I feel like, pace
okay.
is something that is allowing you to like create a goal that is then like allowing you to see the progress. And I think that obviously has like a bigger part of it as well, of being, you know, a better version of yourself or proving that you're able to. And I think that's amazing. But I've noticed though, when I have been out like adventuring and those things that really shape my perspective, it's like even recording on Strava seems so silly, or even like thinking about the distance seems so silly in the grand scheme of things when you're like contemplating like life, when you're looking at like those kind of horizons and those things. It's like it takes you so like far out to why you're doing what you're doing, that these things seem very like, why am I getting caught up in Strava or pace or distance when that's like so irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. So it's like finding that kind of balance of like, it when you have those small things like distance, time, pace, they're amazing because you can tick it off. It's measurable. It's like I'm progressing and I'm getting there. But I always like to have in like the bigger why. And I think that makes a big difference for motivation too, because if you're like, you know what, I want to get strong so I look better. It's like,
yeah, but why?
That might fade away. But if you're like, I want to get stronger so I can like live with vitality and I can like all those kind of things, when you have a really strong sense of why you want to do it, like it makes it so much easier. And I noticed that makes my training so much easier when I have a strong connection to my why. It just seems, you know, that's what I'll do.
Oh, look, you're spot on. And how you've come to that realization at 25 and I'm like 42 and I'm almost 42 and I'm like, yeah, why? No, I think, okay, so to take it all the way back in full disclosure, that there's been, and most people have it, body image issues, right? That's something that I have lived with for, I don't know, since the awkward teenage years. Actually, I remember the moment. It was when I went to uni. I went to uni with, and there was a footballer in my class. He just signed his rookie year. And I was like, dude, you're fucking massive. I'm like, what are you doing? And then that's when I'm like, oh, okay, gym. So it was around about that time. And then it was just trying to understand, I guess, what fitness is all about. And then so initially, admittedly, I was working out and doing all that for body image issues. I was playing a lot of sport at the time as well, so obviously it helped. But as you get older, you realize that it's less about that and it's about how it's feeding into the rest of your life. And the whole body image thing, when people are working out or just trying to be healthy for that reason, it's doing yourself a disservice, because what are you going to do? You know, you want a quick fix. So you're going to go do one of those 6-week boot camps, which is just insane. It's ridiculous, because what are you going to do after the 6 weeks? It's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of then understanding that the body image is going to be a byproduct or representation of you just taking better care of yourself, right? And then if you're able to do it over a stretch of a long term, you stop caring about that anyway, and you start caring more about feeling better. But why? Yeah, it's just the preservation. I think that's more it, and just trying to live, you know, like you said, to have a more a higher vitality to every other part of your life. Would that be it?
Yeah, and that's such a big thing, because it's those small short-term things that seem so enticing, like, oh, I can just like lose all that weight, or I can just like do it really quick and it's a quick fix. But then it's the same thing of like, okay, but if you factor in the long term, like most diets fail and most people end up heavier than when they before they, you know, like all those things that you're like, it's literally setting up to fail. You're then getting into that trap of like the marketing around all these kind of products. Like it's literally like setting you up to fail. Like it's no wonder why these things are just like such a continuous cycle. And I felt like I was kind of trapped in that and was exercising for the wrong reasons, or was caught up in that. And I really had to consciously make a change to find a way to love exercise again, do it for a healthy reason, and find a way that's going to be sustainable. And that's when I really started to take things a bit more like outdoors, where like I started pole dancing, and that was amazing for like body confidence and positivity. Like that was something that was always like encouraged to just like feel good in your own skin. So I was like, rather than going down a way that could make things a bit more toxic where I care even more about it or I get more caught up in it, how can I find a way to like find healthy movement again? So back into like team sports or like social runs. And I was really able to then foster a relationship where I liked movement, and now like I want to create my life around it. Like I love it. Like I got a healthy relationship with it. So it was not easy. Like it was such a hard journey, especially when the messaging was always like, you know, you can lose weight, you can get fitter, you can get more toned. It's like, I understand that, but also for my own mental health and my own well-being, I need to listen to like my own voice in that.
Shit, you are. Yeah, the messaging is wrong.
It's so bad. It's so bad, especially having the lens of having an eating disorder. I just feel like I can see everything so clearly. Like, so even around Christmas time, you hear people talking of like, oh my God, I can't go out because like I'm not ready with my summer body, or like kind of like quick dieting or things that they want around Christmas. Like it's just so, I can hear it so much more prominently with that lens. And I can also see all these little quick fixes and things that people are trying to reach for. And it's...
So going through what you've gone through, having that eating disorder and just having, and like you were saying, just having this whole new perspective and a new lens on things, would it be wrong to think that having an eating disorder works on a bit of a spectrum, right? So there's a lot of us, when I say us, I mean society.
Yeah.
Just through the messaging that we get, we're being told that there is some sort of conformity for this particular reason, but it's for aesthetics, right? And then through that, there's also then a shift into, on the opposite end of the spectrum is just, you know, loving your body, which, great, absolutely, but also just recognizing what needs to be done to maintain a healthy life. So there's all these swings, but it's all coming through different narratives. And when I say that there's a spectrum, there is this end of the scale where it's unhealthy, and on the opposite, equal and opposite end, it's equally unhealthy as well. So what should be a more accurate way of explaining to people what needs to be done if you're going to be dieting? When I say dieting, I mean the food that's going in your body, the output that you're putting out, the energy that you're expending. What would be the right way, or a more sustainable, healthy way?
Yeah, I don't think there is a right way, but I think it comes down to intention. And like that's a really big thing, because you can have an ultra runner or someone who maybe does a lot of exercise but has a good intention of, I want to fuel myself, I want to look after my body, and they're really excited to get results of just like being in like the trail running world, you know, like that I think can be their best version of themselves, or like what they're wanting to do. You can also have the same person with the same outcomes who's just been through a breakup and they hate their body and they hate themselves and they're just like doing it to like punish and push. From the outside, you would never know the difference. They're both people that are turning up to events and training. Like, but it's like that internal thing of what place is it coming from? Is it coming from, I'm going to embrace everything and let things slide because I don't care, or I'm not wanting to put in the effort? Or is it coming from a place of, you know, like some people struggle to sleep in because they need to be productive. Some people struggle to like slow down or actually like honor their body and rest because they're so like caught up in that. I think the best way is looking at what your intention is and finding the healthiest intention.
Yeah, you're asking people to look introspectively. That's a dangerous place.
I know. That's where it all happens.
That is. And I think that, you know, it's when you do, you're going to start asking some questions that you don't have the answers to, because I don't think enough of us have given the opportunity just to really take a deep dive into why we do things. And so it was during COVID. I was speaking with a counselor, and we were going through, a part of it was just like goal setting and setting objectives. And it was like, you know, work-wise, things were progressing. They were progressing positively. And when I say positively, just on paper, things were looking like they were going well. We were trying to identify what success looks like. And then she asked me, and then she's like, so what's the end game here? What's the goal here? And I was fucking stumped, because the whole time we were having the conversations and I was like reeling off answers. I got this. And then she asked me, it's like, what do you want? And I was like, like, damn, I really need to stop and think about this. And then that kind of set off a whole new chain of events and sequence where I was like, okay, what the fuck do I actually want? And then when you start questioning this, everything starts to unravel, completely everything. And it was then a point of like, I've got to rebuild the whole lot, right? And to your point, was why do I do this particular thing, and why do I think this feeds into this, and why do I think that's a good way of approaching it? So how did you even how did you arrive to this point where like you've seemed to have accumulated this amount of wisdom, and this is just through a lot of the life experience, right? So let's go all the way. Let's take it back. You were in hospital, shit's going down. You know that there's some changes that need to be made. Was it at that point there when you realized that changes need to be made?
There was a few different moments, I think, because at the time when I was unwell, I didn't care. I didn't care for anything. I didn't see a future. And so it was like I wasn't really trying to think of what my future self would feel or anything. I was so in it. I was like, this is this. Like, this is how it's going to be, and I just don't care. And so I think, I wasn't ever pulled to try and think differently. I'm like, I made the decision. I was like, that's that. And I even told my parents, crying in hospital, I was like, I'm sorry, but like, this is it. Like, this is like, I'm not going to change. And I think there was like these few little moments, like even after like kind of making that decision, then I'm like, got really upset about the me that was like 7 or 8 or 9, like playing around, being like, one day when I grow up, like I want to have a family, or I want to, like, I had all these like dreams, and I was like, me saying no to life right now means me also saying no to that little girl that couldn't wait to grow up and like have all these things to explore and go up the East Coast and travel overseas. It's like, it really hurt to like have this final decision being like, this is now hurting the little you that was excited for things. And I think holding that really like held a lot of weight, that I'm like, this is something that like, even if I'm in pain at the moment and I hate the world and I don't want to be here, like for the younger me, I need to be there. And I lost a friend who I was in hospital with, and I think that made things even more serious, where I'm like, this is not like, even if your situation is bad and you're not okay, like you still have to push through. Like, even if you want to take the easy option or just like give up, like you've lost someone. Like, this is your like chance to like get better for her and kind of take a stand. And then those things kind of kept like continuing. I started doing like a personal development program that really kind of opened my eyes up to the possibility of having the ability to have change, or like make a difference, or actually change the trajectory of my life. And then it started to really fill with like purpose of like, I've been through what I've been through, and now it literally feels like my calling to make those changes in some way, in the smallest way, whether it be shedding kind of messages of hope, or like being an example that things can get better. Like, that is just what I feel now.
It really is just a cliche, one step at a time thing, right? And what you were saying is that, you know, you didn't even see that there was anything beyond that. And I think that's a place that a lot of people have been in. And when you can't see it, then all you can do is just take the little tiny steps, and then the momentum starts to build up, and then you start to get a bit more clarity. And then you ended up going back to the foundation, or was it that program that helped you? And just recently you spoke there.
Yeah.
That's sick. That's awesome.
Yeah, full circle.
My God. That would have been like, for the people that were there, just to see an example, and then from that, they're able to then see something. They're able to get that glimmer of hope, like, oh my God, okay. There's more to it than this. And, you know, so I'm just assuming that time in your life has just been this anchor, and everything that's happening to you now, you can contrast it to that. And, you know, just having those challenges, I think like we all kind of, not to that extent, hopefully, you know, no one has to battle that. But like, how much good comes from adversity? You know, if you're able to compare, like, you look at all the things that you're doing right now, from your art to your ultra endurance events, or just the fact that like I'm just going to go out there and just run 30Ks because fuck it, why not? It's better than that, right? Like, how much has adversity played in the progression of everything else now?
It's huge. And I think now that I'm kind of past that adversity, which was like my life circumstances, it's like I now get to play with that and grow with adventure, because adventure is exactly that. It's like you don't necessarily have to have the situations that are hard, but you can either put yourself in those situations, or you can kind of, put yourself in a place where it's completely unknown and you're having to like be adaptive and think on the spot and have your perspective challenged all the time. So it's like, it just kind of has shifted, because I don't ever want to be still not taking anything in. Like, I'm just so curious and love learning that I'm like, I want to put myself in those situations that really like make me learn.
I'm just like, my brain is just running with all bunch of like metaphors, right?
Yeah.
Like as in everything that you're doing seems to be kind of like a metaphor of like, when you say that adventure, or just the idea of adventure, for a lot of us, that we don't even appreciate that life is an adventure. And we think that we know what's coming up. We've programmed routines into our lives to make it predictable, because we find comfort in that predictability. But we don't really want to accept the fact that so much of it is completely unpredictable. And if you have this routine, although it feels safe and comfortable, I don't know whether or not you realize how much damage that's doing to everything else that's going on as well. Like, how have you kind of like how are you, the life that you have built around you now, and let's contrast that against the other. Like, give us your take on that juxtaposition of having your life versus something that's more structured.
Yeah, well, just quickly, even on that, I feel like COVID kind of threw that perspective into everyone of like, oh, I thought I had things under control and all kind of like mapped out, and you've got to just be like going with that kind of like flow of things. And I think I had to just foster a relationship around the unknown, because like literally every moment, it wasn't even just like I'm going out for an adventure. It was like every moment in between was kind of like in that unknown. Like I'd like sleep in my car, and like every little thing was like fully just into that unknown in terms of like work, where I was living, where I was going next. Like that was a huge difference from the fear I was kind of living in those kind of years before. Like I was really like embracing it kind of in every moment. And it did just remind me of like a thought where I see a kind of similarity between trying to recover and also kind of getting into the more like outdoorsy, like where my lifestyle is now. It was like, it kind of feels like there's a tipping point, like you're climbing up a mountain and then the ease comes on the other side of like going back when I was speaking at that program where I once was. It was like, it just felt so hard to try and be wanting to live a life that felt so far away, and then, take a step, but then go back, or like think this is so far away, or it's so hard. Maybe I like live in this conflict of I want to recover, but then I eat and I feel guilty. And when I got to that tipping point of having so many like friends around me or things I was really excited about, I was like, I don't want to go back to that. Like I hit that tipping point of like, I'm more excited to be exploring all the things that I'm now excited by than allowing those things to happen. Same with adventure, where it was like, I don't know if I can make this a lifestyle. Like maybe I'll always have to live in Melbourne the way that I have. Like I'm not sure if it's actually possible to have that as like a lifestyle. And like slowly that kind of, I started meeting more people and getting into it. And now it's like I couldn't think of anything else. Like, yeah.
Yeah, right. I'm just processing all of this at the minute, because there's so much of this all happened. So when did you move out to Mount Beauty?
I'd been kind of like the last 3 years on and off. I'd actually just been doing I'd only done like 2 rentals, and they'd both been 3 months. In between, it's been kind of like house sitting, staying with friends, being in the van or the car, like kind of been on the move. I've now actually just like committed to like a rental, but until then it was super. I was like, do I live here? Do I not? Every time I come back, people are like, so how long are you here for? Like it was, kind of always on the move, but probably the last 3-4 years since COVID. So when lockdown got announced, I was working at the snow at Mount Borbor. And then when the actual lockdown happened, I was over at, between like Mount Hotham and Falls. And I kind of had this moment. I was like, okay, I either go back to Melbourne and I know what it's going to be like. It's going to be a strict lockdown, or I can stay with my friend in a van and we can be regional, because we're working regional, and see what comes from that. And so I was on the lift up at Falls when it happened. And I was like, you know what? I am just going to put on the Facebook page, is there anywhere that is looking for work? Because if I don't have work, I have to go back to Melbourne. Like, unless you have somewhere you live and somewhere you work, you can't be regional.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just put that up, and then I drove to a town called Bright that I'd never been to before, started my shift there, and that's, where I've been.
Man. So, all right, look, you're also an artist,
Yes.
which is kind of how we connected through all this.
Yeah.
So just to give a bit of a breakdown, like I followed your page, Explore Your Core, not realizing that there was also another part of everything else that you do until there was a post that you put up where it was like, oh my God, okay, so we have this person who has a podcast that is also a muralist and an artist, and also just so happens to be an outdoor ultra adventurer as well. And it just blew my mind that someone is capable of managing a life of doing so many different things to a very extreme kind of, I don't want to say extreme because it's kind of like it's all relative, but to a high caliber, doing everything like your work. It's great. Like your murals shows, you have this connection with nature, and I think that that's really just the underpinning thing that's keeping all of this together, right? It's just like you found this, you're grounded in nature. So like, what are we missing out on?
What do you mean?
Like, what's, I mean, like, if I like speaking with you, that I get this idea that like it feels as though that, you're so fucking happy, right? And you seem like that, that you're able to do all these things that you love and that you thrive. Like, what is the thing, or what are the underpinning things that most people's society is just not acknowledging or not considering in their day to day?
I don't know if I could pinpoint it, but I feel like doing what I'm doing is like, there isn't so many things inhibiting me. Like as a creative person, really love being able to tap into that creative process. So being an artist is something like it gets to be channeled. And then I also love the outdoors, and like that literally gets to be channeled. And I think prior to that, when I didn't really know what I wanted to do, or just like kind of like that Melbourne life, it was like this thing of like, I'm craving meaning, I'm craving these connections, I'm craving all these things I want, and I don't know how to make it happen because I'm in a job that I don't like, and I'm in an area I don't like, and I'm having conversations I'm not even like caring about. Like, it just felt like who I wanted to be and what I was living felt really far apart. And now I feel like I've spent the time finding what I love and then making it work so I can do what I love, that I have the access to these things so easily. Like, boom, like I want to go do that adventure, I'll make it happen. Like, I wanted to do a hike from Kosciuszko to Bright to like raise awareness. So that was like a 250k hike. I was like, cool, that, like, now I've got the idea. How can I pull it together and make it happen? And I have the ability now to like do the thing that I've been wanting to do, in that sense of like, I might be like full of energy. Cool. I can jump on the bike and go for a mission. I might be feeling really just like introspective. I can like jump on the high line and like sit with that. Or I might feeling creative and I can like turn it into an art piece. I feel like I have that channel that, from the idea or from a moment gets to be like,
just get shit done.
Yeah. That's a really nice feeling. I don't have those blocks.
I think that a lot of the blocks that we have are kind of just in here as well. Sure, there are some more like, more physical and tactile challenges. Like, if a lot of people that in their 20s, if they have just decided that I want to move here, they can do that. Yeah. And a lot have. So there are a lot of like restrictions, but I think that we also kind of like rely on having those restrictions just to keep us here and just to keep us safe and not going for that.
Yeah,
that
you have
sense.
to allow yourself to feel and be scared and like risk failing. Like, I think that's a really big thing as well. Like, to have those things, like, I look back and I'm like, oh, like it'd be so much easier to have like a 9 to 5, or just be somewhere like you've got consistent money for the year, or consistency like where you're living. But it's something that you have to be willing to like really be in those depths of either the highs, the lows, or like the uncomfortability of it all. Like, and that's, I think, what keeps getting rewarded as you make those changes, is like you have to give up like that kind of security or the thing that is keeping you comfortable. And that's where I think the crux is of people like, well, no. Like, I don't think I'm willing to give up the stability of that. And you've just got
So it's just a perspective shift?
I think so.
Yeah. So just trying to find the reward and just trying to find the joy in the things that we fear, doing the safety, the things that we fear you're leaning into it and you're finding the joy in the challenge.
Yeah. Well, I think going through the eating disorder gave me a high threshold for fear because I felt it every day for so long. And I think I had to kind of reshift my like perspective on fear because I obviously was going to feel it for so long. And now it's like I get to build a relationship that's really healthy with it. And I continue to like walk alongside it. For example, learning to high line. I was shit scared. Oh my God. Like sitting on the line, being so high up, like to just be on the line, I was like shaking, like, oh my God, this is so scary. And that was a mental thing of being like, yes, it's my body telling me I should be scared. Like humans aren't meant to be up this high. Like that's very fair. But like, how can I like work alongside it and be kind of empowered with it? And now fear gets to be something that I can trust myself when I'm feeling it, that making decisions, say like with business or career or all those things, it's like, I know how it feels. Like I can navigate it sometimes.
Oh, geez. I showed my son, Lennox, my 8-year-old, there was a video of someone doing highlining from a hot air balloon to a hot air balloon. And I was like, dude, you want to do this? He goes, no. I was like, let's go. And he's like, there's no way. But I'm like, that would be, the idea of doing that is, for me, is sickening. Absolutely sickening. Like, how could you even think to do that? But at the same time, like, that would be pretty awesome. Even just to be up in the clouds to begin with and to put your foot down. Like, what talk me through just that feeling, that state that you're in. How do you overcome that? And how do you then regain control over your body to do the thing that you're set out to do?
Yeah. Well, I can't even describe the feeling of how it feels like when it does feel like good in that sense. Like the feeling of like being on the edge or being up high, it just feels like everything's so heightened and enhanced. And with highlining, it's not about like, let me just like slam this fear away or let me like push through. You're not like screaming for, a move like climbing. It's like you have to pretty much meditate. Like as soon as you start like thinking, like I fall off. Like I need to be almost without thought, just focused on everything. And I feel very like in tune with my body and like that kind of like internal balance. It's really incredible. Like it's a feeling that I don't even think I can describe. But the fear that I felt to begin with was like a survival kind of feeling. Like I was on the line being like, I don't think my leash is tied in. So I felt like if I tried to stand up, I would fall to my death. Like, and this I think is a common thing, but I felt for quite a while where it was like, I'd have to keep tugging on the rope that I'm tied into, being like, okay, I'm on the line. Like I was mentally being like, you know what? If I fall and die right now, how can I be okay with this? Like I really like, it was so terrifying, but it was like, I am safe. Like given that, like there's a backup line, like this is safer than most things actually are, given that like the lines are set up properly. I can kind of like, but it like actually is like, and that's like with climbing, like when the systems are right and things are like done properly, it is quite safe given there aren't choices that you have to make that have risk involved. But so I was like, okay, well if I'm literally harnessed in, I can't really fall. I don't have to make a move to then be safe. I am safe. Well, then how can I lean into it? And I just had to keep challenging like the mental, like it was literally like meditation where it's like you're not physically doing too much. You just have to like mentally change the way you think. I think that's what it was.
What was the preparation like for this? Was there any? Was there? I mean, other than just doing the slacklining, grounded, a couple of feet off the ground, how would you mentally prepare for this?
I think just doing things at height, like a bit like the climbing and those kind of things. I don't think there's really much that translates.
I mean, in terms
feeling.
of did you have to practice the meditation and just come to terms with the fact that this is going to be something that you've never done before?
I guess it was my meditation. Like when I was on the line, just like sitting there, like trying to stand up, like that was the preparation, I guess, of like overcoming it.
Everything that you were saying there, and like I said earlier, it's riddled with metaphors. And I'm like, oh my God, this is how do you take this little bit of wisdom and then apply it to this part of life, like 1 foot at a time, take the next step. And then it's just about being present, and it's just like, how do you get this foot in front of the other? Like literally, like your body is resisting it, and then you just have to force that next step. And then you're saying you're standing on the edge. It's like, oh man.
Yeah. But it was a big thing, I think, of committing, because when I was learning to stand, I was falling. And I remember saying like, I'm not even visualizing standing up right now. Like, and like, yeah, that's probably why you're falling. I was like, but that means, because I'm on the line, me standing up means I'm going to fall further. Like if me fully standing, I'm going to like whip. I don't want that. And so I was kind of like, even when I was visualizing, I was kind of getting 3/4 or like halfway up. I was like, no wonder I wasn't standing. And so when I kind of changed that visualization of like, I'm walking and like fully visualizing the standing and walking, then I was able to actually like do that.
That's a big part. For me, like the whole visualization is a practice that I try to do as regular as possible, especially with things entering the unknown. Have you seen have you ever used virtual reality? Yeah. Have you seen the one where the practice of walking on a plank? That's basically you could, if you're walking on a bit of wood, on a plank of wood that's on the ground, walk across it, no problem. You put yourself in virtual reality and you're walking across the plank, but now what you're seeing is that you're above the ground, crossing over a building, and it just instills this fear in you. It's physically the same act, right? But then the whole
Higher
context.
consequence.
Well, I mean, there's
not virtual reality, but high consequence of your mind thinking if you fall, that's you dead. But
as much as you just try to rationalize it with yourself, and you're trying to convince yourself, there is some physiological response that you just well, I don't want to say that you can't override, but you find it really, really hard to override.
Yeah.
I guess I was working in this startup where we did virtual reality about how you embody a virtual avatar to help develop with motor skills. So you're essentially just visualizing, but in a more visceral sense, because you don't have to actively use your own brain. You're just seeing it. And so I was just doing a lot of research into the power of visualization. And there have been a lot of studies that show that you can actually gain strength and increase strength just through visualizing and mentally rehearsing a routine, and it sends the same responses to your brain will send the same signals to those muscles, and vice versa. It will just relay in the same way, because your body can't differentiate after the fact. It can't differentiate between memory and imagination.
Yeah.
Right. So having that practice of visualization and then to be able to project yourself into a situation that you've never experienced before is the best way that we know of how to condition and ready yourself for the unexpected. Or you can just go ahead and just do it, and then the next time it comes around,
I think visualization is literally everything, and that's even like our motor neurons. Like when we see someone like play piano, like our motor neurons are like firing the same that they are. Like it's crazy the power that has, and I think it can be a wishy-washy of like manifest and like visualize your life kind of thing. But I'm like, I hands down give so much credit to visualization, but I think was a really important part of the personal development program that I did was those contents of visualization where he would like run you through the kind of like scenario and like you go through all like the negatives and like everything, and then you go through and the positives, and you start like imagining like the life you want to live and think, and so I was setting goals and like I created like 100 list and started to visualize, and because I have so many interests, I'm like, okay, well, I need to work out what it is that I want to spend my time in. I can't do it all. Like I kind of want a bit of clarity, and so I would visualize what the success of that idea would look like. Like what's the very, very end? So like say you get into running, what in like a crazy reality, like what could that look like? Is that something I want or not? What could that look like if I became, say, a mural artist or a graphic designer, or like what would that look like? And then I could really play in that visual space of does it align with what I want? Is that actually what's making me happy? Do I feel like that kind of sense of purpose in that? And I could kind of mentally go through them all. So I feel like I was never just directionlessly going places. I was like, I know what that looks like. And I think I have, huge credit to the power of visualization.
I find like, tell me what you think about this, right? Like I find it particularly tricky when we try to visualize, because we only know what we know.
Yeah.
And we take inspiration from a bunch of other people. So when you're trying to like compartmentalize your life and saying that, okay, there's to your point, you were saying like, if I was to pursue a career in art, if I was to go out in this endurance event, this endurance race, what is it going to look like? But then I will then take inspiration from others, and what it looks like is going to be what it is that they did. But the challenge I have with that is that what it is that they did fits into the whole grand scheme of their entire life.
Yes.
And I can't just necessarily take this little bit, plug it into my life and expect it to work with this little bit as well. That's the challenge that I have with just trying to, I guess, bring it all together for me.
Yeah.
Right. So how have you navigated that?
Yeah, that's such a big, hard one because I've been the same. Like, cool. I want to learn. I want to see what these things kind of come together. I take inspiration from a lot of things and a lot of people. So I was like, all right. People say, you know, you can kind of like follow someone's recipe and you can get to where they want. I was like, amazing, that works. But I like parts of these things, but I don't want to be that person and I don't want to do just that thing. Like if I do just that thing, it doesn't incorporate. And what I find really hard being an artist and an adventurer, it's like most people in the adventure world is adventure. Like that's their whole world. And then most people in the art world, like they're artists. And so I'm like, how, you know, like maybe I'll rock up to like an art festival. It's like, it's not going to fill my cup of these sides of things and like this part of it. So I was like, this is almost impossible to like, even if I have a mentor, they're a mentor in like one part of me, but that doesn't mentor me in like my whole life. And how do I know what kind of pieces like play together? Like there's no blueprint. And I was listening actually to a snippet of your podcast where it's like, if you take someone's blueprint, like their blueprint is the accumulation of their life experiences and interests. And like everyone like has their own unique experiences that make their own blueprint. So you can't just copy and paste someone's and expect it to like work for you. And so that is literally the biggest challenge of like, there is no like there's no end thing. And what I find really hard is because I don't have like a career, you know, title or a role, I can't be like, cool, that's who I am. I can see the steps that get me there and I can like break it back down. I can see other people in the same role. It's like, I don't even know what that is. And so it's been the biggest challenge of trying to work out. I kind of feel like I'm geared towards being in the space where people aren't. And so it's like, okay, how can I find the link between psychology and adventure and art and psychology? I don't know anyone doing that, but that kind of feels like it's my purpose to be in those spaces and pull them together. And I think that's all I need to know to keep going forward in that.
I think you're right. And I think that you just got to lean into it and to everything that you're doing, just lean into the unknown and just embrace it. And then, you know, when you're finding just your little slice of it all as well. And part of this is just also going to be, and this is something that I'm really trying to work on, is giving yourself a bit of allowance and the permission to not be able to reach the heights that person is, because there's like, so it could be an endurance runner. You know, I'll be reading up about how they do things and, you know, how they've been clocking in the Ks and their progression over the years. Like, okay, firstly, understand that this person has been doing this for like 20 years.
That's their full time.
That's their full-time job. They have a whole team around them. They have meticulously counted every calorie that goes in their body. They cannot step out of line. Their whole makeup is the next race. I can't do that. And it's not, when I say I can't do that, it's not putting necessarily a cap on that. It's not a way of downplaying my capabilities. Is that no, if you want to introduce other things in your life, which you love, then you have to then let go of this. So there is this whole, don't put so much pressure on yourself to achieve these standards, which in your blueprint, it's not going to happen.
It's exactly that. It's like, it's literally not even in your blueprint. Even if you were to do that, you're like, oh my God, I'm missing all these things that I wish I was growing on the side. Yeah. And so it's like, even if you were to reach those levels, it's not what you would be wanting. Like you wouldn't actually find that happiness. And I think it's so toxic with social media where it's like, you see someone's 100%. Like some people have that where they're like, it's just this one thing that they're obsessed with. Maybe it's handstands. Maybe it's this style of art. Maybe it's this kind of like sport. That's their 100% that they spend their all their hours and all their years prior going towards that. You see that quickly on something on socials. And then you also see another part of yourself that you really love and you see them in their 100% and you're like, well, I only feel like I'm at that kind of like 30% and like it's so far to then get to where they are. Even when you're at your 100%, when they're like divvied up, it's so easy to be in that comparison. It's like that one person is different to that other person and therefore like, you know, you can't have, like that one person can't also have what that other person has. Yeah. Because that's like double the capacity of what they can do. But we somehow expect that we can be at the highest level in the areas that we like in all those kind of fields. And like, it's literally something that you don't.
You just can't. Yeah. You can't. And then fucking let's just okay. Then you can take it back to what we were talking about. You know, when you were going through your rehabilitation and just trying to find, I guess, find who you are. You know, just at a very base level, and then building from that, and just giving us that bit of that slack. You know, that bit of leeway to just to occasionally have to fail or just to fall short of the mark because we just had unrealistic expectations to begin with. And I think that, you know, with a lot of the disappointment that we feel is because we potentially just expected too much, right? And then we think that, and this is going to a conversation I had recently where I do take inspiration from this person, this, and then trying to now in my 40s carve out a life that I want to live, much like what you're doing now in your 20s. But I feel as though there's a lot of catching up that I need to do because this is something that I should have done years ago. So now the catch-up process is like, okay, I want a podcast. So I'm looking at all the different podcasters out there and trying to take inspiration from them. So it's like, okay, sure. Now I've got to pump out 2 a week, 3 a week. But I'm like, pump the brakes, man, because if you're going to do that, then it also means that you can't work on your paintings. You can't work on your art. But now if I want to work on my art, I'm looking at all the different artists that have like pushed and made it hard and made it work. Like, all right, sweet. This is what I need to do. It's a 5-year runway to be a pro. So I want to be a pro this, pro this, pro this, pro this. Like, dude, relax.
I know.
Relax, man. Like you might not be able to get to do all things, but I fucking want to do all things.
It's hard to have that patience because part of it's like, cool, if I have the patience, I can relax where I am. And then it's this unsettling thing of, well, then I'll never get anywhere. Like, I don't want to be content, even though content feels nice. But it's the same thing. I'm like so driven that I'm like, oh my God, I really want to spend all week, like, you know, all week doing this thing. And then but I also want to spend all week doing this thing and all week doing this thing. I'm like, I can't just bend time like that. Yeah. Like, you know, it's that hard thing of, it's not just that it's not just wanting it, but it's also like, how do you then factor in that things like take time? And then there's also the other things of just like regular work, life things, whatever it is that you kind of got to factor in. I find that a really big internal push and pull because I love being driven and I love being inspired by things. So like, for example, like even watching short films is how I even came across highlining. When I saw someone highlining in the clouds, I was like, I would love to be able to do that. And like, I want to, you know, take those steps to get there. But I can also feel really deflated because I've just mentally put myself into someone's world that would take a long time to get there. But it's also then like, then I'm really not content with where things are. And so it's like, you either can be content with where you are and maybe not move as fast, or sit with not being content and kind of like be pushing, but also then you live so much of your life not content. So it's like, it feels like such, you know, like a high and low of just like, you know, seeing all these amazing places and being in awe and then like going back to reality, or, you know, like reading a book or like watching a doco or a short film, being really, really inspired and then like having that drop. So
do you have goals? Yeah. What are your goals?
Got a bunch of different ones. Yeah. I feel like a lot of them I don't realize are a goal until the idea comes for what it was. Like for the New Zealand trip and the Australian Alps track that I did, like that was something I was always like, it feels right. When the idea came, I'm like, cool, that exactly feels right. Like I know that's literally exactly what I want to do. I wouldn't have been able to tell you the year before that that's what I wanted to do. So it's like, it feels like a lot of them, I know what the feeling feels like. I know what it kind of looks like, but I couldn't tell you what it is. But I do have a lot of goals around pushing further into the adventure space in ways that are more like creating my own route, my own kind of expeditions, like pulling my own personal experience and interests into that kind of expedition, whether it be the first time doing something or kind of like the length of something. I can totally see my mind kind of like piecing something that's new together. And I think in the art space, it's kind of being able to combine my own like creative processes in, I think I'm more drawn to the ambitious side of like the art of like being able to do something at large scale or something that's kind of like unique or niche rather than being like a commercial artist that can consistently do art. And then I think it all kind of ties in with like the bigger picture of my experience and wanting to be able to have a bit of a voice in the adventure scene and the art scene and the psychology scene and kind of like share my perspective and help make a little bit of a difference.
Do you have a vision for that, or is this just more of a leaning into it right now?
I guess leading into it, I feel like all the dots connect looking backwards, and that's how it always has been. And I think that's what it is. It's like all the things that I'm doing are piecing the three parts of me together for the long thing, but I won't know until it's happened, and then I can look back. But yeah.
All the dots connect backwards. Yeah, I like that. It is a bit of a thing where like sometimes when you're in a particular moment and it feels like it seems random and disjointed from everything else, that it's been like plucked out of obscurity. It's like how did I get here when I was going along this way? But then when you are able to apply that retrospective lens, like, oh, okay, now I'm here because of that, and I got there because of this, and what are the lessons that I took away from that and apply it to this? So with all these things that you're working on, that whole psychology point, because you're studying as well. What are you studying right now? Like what is what is like literally the discipline, and what are the specifics about it?
Yeah, so I studied my Bachelor of Psychology and just got accepted to do my 4th year, so like the honours. And that would depend, I guess, what the thesis gets to be around. But I think it's been that push and pull between, with study, it's quite a generic kind of like system, and I'm trying to find a way where I can like investigate the little like side quests in those sense of like how do I, hey uni, I'm really interested in like the science of awe and like the biology behind like what changes happen when you're out like in nature and all these kind of things. Like how can I make that happen? Like, so yeah, I've kind of stuck to doing it in my own way of like, you know, podcasting and meeting people and kind of networking. But now I'm really kind of excited to delve into the science and the field a bit more to be able to, I want to be in the spaces that are a bit more emerging. Like I feel like we're still catching up to a lot of things. Like even with being neurodiverse, it's like I've felt these things or I've known these things, but it's only a matter of time until the science and literature kind of catches up. So I kind of want to be in that space where it's like starting to finally show, you know, what I feel or all those things that I kind of know.
When you say that you want to study the psychology of awe, tell me about that.
Oh my God. Well, I think that has been such a big thing for me. When I was trying to like recover, you know, there's like psychologists that you can see and there was like your general treatment and things. I'm like, it just didn't resonate. Like I just felt like I'd rock up and just have a conversation and like, this is the treatment. And it was just like, it just didn't feel like any connection, to be honest. Like it just wasn't hitting a soul level. I'm a really deep thinker. I feel a lot. Like I was like, I need something to meet me there. And when I started exploring a bit more and like just being really curious, like I just felt like I tapped into another realm and something like higher than myself. I don't know what you would call it, but that kind of feeling made me feel connected again, which helped with the depression. And it made me see the world in a different lens. And so when I've been like swimming in like bioluminescence or being like in the canyons where there's glowworms, or those moments that you're like cannot even describe what's going on, like there is something really powerful in that. And I think, you know, it can be all wishy-washy of like, or whatever it is, but I'm like, there is something that changes us when we feel awe, and it's not really spoken about. It's not really like researched. I'm like, there is so much weight in that.
There is. There's a lot of conversation going on about it. I've spoken with a couple of people that is the basis of their work. There's a visual artist, Isaiah Morris. So he has a Christian background. So he's right now in King's College over in the UK, and he's studying his studying is based around trying to understand the relationship between us and spirituality, and just that sense of it and how it's conveyed through art, specifically through art. Like, how is it that we look at art and it makes us and elicits this feeling, this sense of awe, the entering the sublime, and what that means, and how do we capture that? So I've been fortunate enough to have some conversations about that, and it has really got my brain ticking into how it just plays in the different areas, right? Like there's, you know, we were chatting before about, I guess, like consciousness and the subconscious, and there's so much about that we just don't understand, and we can be pretty dismissive about it. And sometimes we just like, oh, it's just some of that woohoo stuff. It's like, well, no, I mean, like, let's just try to explore this a little bit more. Like, why are we so dismissive about something that we don't understand? And instead of just leaning into it, I love the idea of trying to understand, or I actually want to speak with more people about that, right? Like I want to try to get on scientists that's their role, some psychologists. So you can be the one. So go finish this thesis, and I actually want to have an in-depth conversation and speak with people about that. There's one with Liam Sardea, which I think that you'd be really interested in. He's a philosopher of creativity. So he really opened up my mind into how to lean into it, you know.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what I was saying about the labels. Like when you are able to, when you label something and almost compartmentalize it, and it just gives it could be really restrictive, you know, with your ADHD, because that's so broad to understand it. And then when you give it a label, it then associates it with something that it might not necessarily be, right? So it could be you're playing in a dangerous space, but has it? I mean, like, how have you found it? What has been the way that it's helped you, and how are the ways it's hindered you
with ADHD?
Yeah, or just like being able to recognize it for what it is.
Yeah, well, I think just quickly on the thought that I still have around awe, like when I read Julie Baird's book, Phosphorescence, it's like finally had the words where I was like, oh, I'm reading someone who also appreciates awe, because I felt it. Like, I chase awe. That's like, since being unwell, that's kind of been my driving thing of chasing moments that literally leave me in awe. And I've never really known, that I even had words, but I'm like, I know that it like changes your perspective and it makes you feel small and it makes time go away, and like all those things that I've felt from it. It was really cool to see that in a book and be like, oh, this actually has a lot of credit. Like, this is something that, I'm hoping for the science to kind of get out and see that. So yes, I will be keen to chat after I've learned a bit more about it. But with the ADHD, I think labeling it has been interesting, because it's been good in the sense that I now can be like, these traits do fit into that thing. Like, it makes sense. These things can kind of like be explained. And then just having more language around it, like, it's because these things in my brain are wired differently. It's like, finally, I actually have a bit of an explanation. And it's allowed me to kind of just take charge and own it now. It's like, cool, now that I know it's this, I can use any of these traits as my strengths. Like, everything that was, say, like a weakness or things that kind of hinted, like, made things hard, like being so spontaneous or energized, I'm like, how can I use that to be my strength? And I feel like that's, rather than me trying to mask all the time to like be in social situations where it was really overwhelming and just like put up with it and then go home crying, or try and do normal life. I'm like, fuck normal life. I'm not doing any of it. I'm going to like, if this is normal life, I'm cutting all of that out and I'm doing this. Like, that just gave me the power to be like, you don't have to apologize. You don't have to try and like fit the mold and then do your things that you want to do on the side. It's like, take all that out that's taking up time and just lean into everything that's like different. And that's, I guess, the path that I'm on.
Yeah, it's like, who are you trying to please here? Have you found that, like, when you are able to then you say that this is what it is, have you found that there have been times when like, shit, this is what it is, but then along the way realize that actually it's not this, it's this?
Oh, yeah. And I feel like it's completely understood as well. And it's actually really nice. Usually up in Mount Beauty, I've come home for a few days and had a coffee with Mum. And it was really lovely. She's like, I really want to learn more about this. Like, I just found out that there's two types, that there's like inattentive and hyperactive. And she's like, oh, wow, this is like, I really want to learn more so I can understand you. Because that was even nice to hear, because when I first told her, bless her soul, but she's kind of like, oh, like a lot of kids struggle with concentration at school. And it's like, it's not that. Like, I can hyperfocus. I can, when I'm interested in something, it's all I want to do. Like, it's not an inability to concentrate. And it's not just this like hyperactive kid that is running around everywhere. Like, it's the way that you think. It's your premise of the world, like at a baseline, is different. And you have to navigate the world as in like, not in a neurotypical world. Like, the clashes of that is immense. Like, even, being a creative and wanting to do things creatively and then realizing, oh, we live in a world that's, materialistic, and I feel like I'm constantly having to like adapt and change things to fit the world that we all do live in, which is a neurotypical kind of built world. But it was nice to see that she's wanting to learn more, because the label had those associations. I was like, I just feel misunderstood. Like, I'm like, I can't even speak to you about this. Like, this is, if me giving you a label is now associating the label that you had in your head, we can't even. And so words can help to a degree. I think they can get you moving, they can get you started, and then it's like shifting when you realize it's not right or not right. So
at a baseline, you were just speaking a different language.
Yeah,
no, I get that. I don't know if there's necessarily a thing as neurotypical though. I feel as though, I mean, like you've got your world sense, I have mine. We're able to have a conversation, and I feel as though that we're aligned in many ways, but like I have no idea, right? Like I don't like you could be seeing things completely different. Every conversation that I have to then I assume that there is some sort of convergence of ideas, and there's something that's happening, and like we're ruminating on concepts and flowing, and there's some sort of like a collaboration going on there. But at the same time, they're completely different perspectives on things as well. And then you look at and then you want to expand that on a global scale of 8 billion people, that there's potentially like 8 billion different universes happening at once. So I don't know if there's like a baseline. Well, there is a baseline, but I don't know whether or not we all tap into that and be like, yeah, that's good. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
I think for the most part, we're just like, I don't like this. Or at least like
Not
some
many
parts of
people
it's like,
do.
yeah, I think that there's going to be, I think we all accept that there is a baseline, but at the same time that we're all going to feel friction with it in one way or another. Like that's just like, I'm like, I don't agree with that, you know? And I think it's healthy because it keeps things kind of flowing and keeps things moving. But I think that people just need to lean into their differences a little bit more. And we're going to go back full circle to creating your own blueprint.
Yeah, but I feel like just on that though, like it's been such a challenge. I think like absolutely no black and white. There is no neurotypical like that's literally just black and white. And I think a lot of people don't even agree with what the norm of success or the norm of life is. You know, school, study, work, how like a lot of people don't even resonate with what we perceive as your normal trajectory or what success is, of being like thinking you're going to be happy with money and whatever that kind of like looks like. But it has been such a challenge trying to go, I guess I'm geared, because I am slightly geared the other way with things. I've always wanted to get advice from people, like I love learning, but I always feel like it's almost the opposite in a way. So it's like the general census is like, get up earlier, train harder, do more. And I'm like, no, I have to learn to sleep in. I have to slow down when I can. I need to like be okay with not always wanting to be productive. And then there's a society going, you got to lose weight, you got to like be skinnier, you got to eat healthier. No, I have to learn to gain weight because I'm severely underweight. Like this is so freaking hard. And like all those kind of messages I feel I kind of push from society, because I kind of am on the other extreme. The messaging is kind of tailored more towards the neurotypical, like you should get up, you should eat better. I'm like, how can I learn to be more compassionate with myself? Like I have to almost go against the messaging of what's out there. And that's really hard when I'm always seeking advice.
The messaging is always the deficit, isn't it? It's like the we're not good enough, and there's no room for the compassion. There's really not. I mean, there is the messaging for the compassion, but then there's attached to the compassion isn't a. But you could also be better, right? There's no like. How do you play in that space where it's like you can be comfortable in your own skin, but also recognize that part of this is a process, because there's nothing remains same, right? So if you're not actively doing something, then there's going to be atrophy in things, right? So you have to also understand that if you're not flexing a particular muscle, literally, metaphorically, then there will be atrophy. So you need to also have enough compassion and self-love to be able to maintain the things that you want to. This is that's a tough balance.
Yeah.
You're not going to be the demographic for it, but do you know the show Bluey? You don't know the show. You're like so far out of the demographic. You're either going to be a 6-year-old kid.
Oh, as in Bluey the dog?
Yeah, the show. Yeah. So there's an episode in that's called Born Yesterday. So firstly, I fucking love Bluey. It is one of the best shows ever made, bar none. The best kids TV show.
I wasn't sure that's what you're referring to, because that's what I came to. I was like, oh, yes.
Yeah, the dogs. Hands down, one of the best shows that's ever been made. And there was an episode called Born Yesterday. Actually, I think you would love the show because it is completely riddled with philosophy. Like, I want to eventually get them on the show, and I want to pick their brain about it, because I think that they are very insightful, every one of those episodes. But this particular episode called Born Yesterday, where the dad pretends that he was born yesterday. And the whole thing is that they go around and he's in awe of everything. And it just gives you this opportunity just to be able to find anything and find amazement in it and wonderment. And when it reminded me when you said that you try to look for awe in things, like I spent a lot of time with when he's bored, I'm like, awesome. Right. This is an opportunity for us now. Let's find a thing, anything, pick a thing, a random thing in this room, and we're going to break it down and we're going to be able to, and we're going to try to understand why this thing is just amazing.
It's so baffling if you let it be. Like, even you see trees all the time, like, what of it? And you're like, hang on a second. How the heck did it know to grow like that? How does it sustain itself? You're like, it was literally a seed and now it can like last for, like, it's just wild. And what's really cool is like, there's no limit to how much kind of awe you can like feel or investigate because it's literally led by your own curiosity. And that's something that you always have. You can be in a room, in a white walled room, and you can be like, cool, this is literally boring. You can find a way to be curious and you can find a way to like find those things. Like, you know, motivation disappears. You can't always find something that you're passionate about, but you can always be curious in your environment. And I think you don't ever have to have, you know, like a near-death experience or anything to like be grateful. But it's like, when I had that moment where I'm like, I am so grateful to still be alive, I held on to that because, you know, so that was like, you know, 10 years ago at that kind of point. I could easily be like, I'm only caring about the now, but I'm like, hang on a second. I'm so fucking grateful that I'm still here. And every, you know, cup of tea, every conversation I have, I can hold that so clearly of being like, I'm so grateful that I get to like still be breathing and still be here. And you don't have to have any kind of like rock bottom, but you can always be like, at any moment you can try and find the gratitude that like you're still here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really comes down to curiosity, right?
Yeah.
Like how much or how deep do you want to go and just try to explore your core? How deep do you want to go into it and try to like just fucking like seriously, I've gone down so many rabbit holes, and it could be like when I say trying to find, or when you're talking about trees is a great example because that's baffling. And it could be break it down to even like a molecular level, down to that, and like, how is this happening? So on a complete side note, talking about awe, I have conversations with ChatGPT a lot, just asking it random questions. And I asked the question, I asked like, if you were to remove all the space from the molecules that are on Earth, how, and condense every molecule, remove all the space and condense it down to a size, what size would that be? Have a guess. What size do you reckon it will be if you remove all the space between all the molecules?
Not much.
A pea.
No.
A pea.
I would love to see your ChatGPT history. That could be a podcast in itself.
Yeah, actually, oh my God. It blew my mind. And yeah, there is wonderment in absolutely everything. Like even that, like literally down to a molecular level, you could ask and just, you could be curious about that and what does that mean? And then you're like, oh my God. And then you expand on that, you go down to a molecular level, and then you can just break that up into a universal infinite level, and it's
mind blowing. And like I think it always gives perspective when you're like caught in a rut on some small stressor of work or something, and then you're like, hang on a second. Like when you think of the big picture again, it kind of puts things into perspective, which I think is always really powerful to have. And I was always trying to wonder, I was like, why am I so curious about, you know, like human behavior and what we're capable of, and so like driven in kind of the adventure space and art. They're so about like, I don't know how they're even related, like what, you know, people are like, oh, like in my, when, you know, say I'm at like a running event or whatever, and they're like, oh, like a mural artist. They're just like, what? Like, I would never have picked that. Or like, say I'm doing art. They're like, why are you so sporty? Like, what do you do? It's just like, they almost seem so not related, and there's like kind of no interlap, like overlap. But like the three of them is literally curiosity. Like just how far can I take my curiosity? What can I explore? What can I understand about the world, like within and without, like and around? And like, yeah, knowing that, it's like, well, then I think there's a lot of power in curiosity. Like that has a lot of weight.
So what does that look like? Have you considered how everything feeds into one another? Like your worldview, your life is made up of all these components which are seemingly completely unrelated, but yet you're doing it all. have you considered how one thing affects another?
Well, they're all interrelated. And I mean, I always knew it in a sense. Like I'm not randomly just like, I'm going to pick up hockey. I'm going to pick up this. Like, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, but you know, like I've always known that like there is a correlation, and that's why I can like feel it. And so, yeah, it seemed really scattered, but they've all influenced each other. Like the way that art kind of shapes my perspective on like failure or what I know, and like being in the unknown feeds into the way that I adventure, and then kind of having the spaces merge where like you can creatively be in the adventure space and you can also be in the creative space and like bring adventure in it. And so it's kind of like they've all just come into the one.
Yeah, and if you really think about it, they're not all too far removed from one another, right? Like if you want to bring it down to its essence, down to its core, then it is about experiencing or diving in and exploring awe.
Yeah.
Right.
One's just done outwardly around in the world around through trails, and one's done like more inwardly with like art and creative ideas.
Yeah. That's it. That's exactly it. Yeah. And you know, when just to your point about when people ask you, it's like, how are you so fit and active, but yet you're still doing art? And this is the challenge that I have with labels and trying to break molds, because when you're creating, even with your adventuring, it is a sense of creativity because you are diving into exploring something that's unknown, right? Like you are trying to push boundaries. And in doing so, there has to be, I guess, like an element of creativity within that alone. And then with your creativity, I guess that there has to be an element of also then the endurance, like being able to see how far or how long you can keep going, and being able to just persevere and just to refine and to evolve and grow. So I guess, yeah, down to its essence, they're the same thing.
Yeah, and they complement each other. Like the skills that you learn from one literally kind of translates into the other. Like they're so complemented. But I love even just like how it kind of helps in my headspace. Like one might be movement and the benefits I get from being outdoors, and the other might be more like internal thinking. And, you know, that's something that I get, say, creatively. I might come up with an idea and be able to refine it, or it might be solo hiking for a long time and I get that solitude that I can think as well. But I think the hardest thing I find is having the creative process work in this reality where you've got clients, you've got deadlines. If you want to have art as business, it's not necessarily about having that time where you're in flow state in a creative process, bringing an idea to life. You're doing something that's commercial, that has less kind of potentially creative freedom, that is outcome driven for money. That is my kind of big pull, because if I am just in the creative process, that wouldn't sustain me. Like that wouldn't financially be viable necessarily if I'm just creating ideas and being in that kind of idea generation. But then it's also kind of soul draining when I'm doing work that's just like, yeah, commercial, repetitive, or like meaningless. But like that's been really hard to navigate.
Yeah, and I suppose it's just a matter of then accepting that for what it is. It's been like, okay, I need to do this to be able to facilitate the rest of it. So what's coming up next? So you've got the New Zealand documentary.
Yeah, that will be later in the year. So I'm doing some of the graphics side of that as well, which is really fun to have both my worlds come together. So yeah, that's been in the process and still in the process for later in the year. Yeah, I guess study might be something that takes a bit of time, but I've just started the Outside In initiative, which after, I don't know, I feel like everything, as you were saying, like you learn as you go and things kind of like adapt. So I did an Stand Ups track, and like I did 10 days solo in that. Like I saw a handful of people over the 2 weeks, which is really cool because I wanted that solitude. I feel like I gained a lot, and I was like, cool, for my next mission, I want to do it with like a group of females. Like I want to bring people together and have a shared experience. So that idea realized into the New Zealand trip. And after that expedition, because these kind of take quite a few months in prep, like all my time, that's like what I create. I was like, I really have loved that the last two have been so adventure heavy. And I had the Zirali short film come out, which is really exciting. I'm like, I want to kind of gear a little more, same kind of drive, same kind of like thing that I'm looking for, but more in the art space of how can I bring a bit more of like the outdoors in and kind of create a bit more of having like art and health together. And so like the Outside In initiative is a mural-based project bringing like outside kind of like nature-inspired murals into healthcare settings and kind of like bringing that together. So I'm like, that's now my interest of like being maybe able to do a documentary around more of like people's perspective and the psychology from that side of things. So that's my year.
What was the response like after that short film, the Zerali one?
Oh, it was amazing. It was really, really precious. I speak at schools and have been kind of like, being able to show that around, and it's so daunting to have that out in the world, like to know that like my most kind of vulnerable parts are just like out there. But it's been such a beautiful response because I've been getting a lot of like, it's not just like, oh wow, you went really hard or you went really far. It was like, that meant a lot to see you kind of like live the life that you want to be living, and you know, to go past those things and like be yourself. And the one that I did at the personal development program, it was like so beautiful to hear from teenagers. Like it was so cool to see, you know, kind of like take your mask off and feel like you can be yourself. And that I think really is like, that means a lot to hear, to hopefully inspire other people that were, you know, like in my position, or that kind of school period where you're like wanting to be yourself, but you got peer pressure. You're wanting to like pursue your dreams, but you're told you got to be doing otherwise. Like I want to just keep planting that little seed that like you can, and you can also, you know, be yourself. It's been really beautiful.
It was full on. And I say that in the best possible way because it was, you're right. It was you at your most vulnerable state. There was a lot of moments where like I watched it knowing what I was going to be seeing, but at the same time there was so much of it where it was just more than what I was expecting. But I say that because in a way that like it just highlighted the disparity from where you were to where you are now. And it was done in a way that was very clear. And it the setting was fucking beautiful as well, where you guys shot. Was that basically near home?
Yeah.
And they managed to fit so much context in such a short amount of time.
It was just a weekend that they came down for.
And they put it together really well. It was a brilliant piece. And like as condensed and concise as it was, it explains so much about you, your psyche, the drive, the compassion, all of it. And you know, it's a well put piece to showcase, to give a snapshot of who you are. So yeah, no, I got a lot out of it, and it was that right after that I was like, oh my god, I need to have a chat with her.
You know, it's even like a powerful process that I feel like everyone can do is like, because he asked me questions in the lead up of being like, you know, like what parts of you as a child were there of the things that you're doing. So that's when I got the videos of me on like the balancing beam doing gymnastics, and like, oh my god, I didn't see that correlation between, you know, me doing gymnastics. And I remember in high school, the most random thing, I was like, I want to walk around the football oval. So like, you know how you've got like the metal railing that goes around the football. I was like, I want to walk a whole lap without falling off. And it took me a year. Like I would just go every day when I'd walk my dog, and I'd maybe get like 100 meters, fall off, keep walking my dog, like nothing of it. And yeah, after a while I did the full like 400 meters walking without falling off and didn't think anything of it. I thought it was, you know, just like a random thing I wanted to do. And then like getting to highlighting, it's like, you can kind of see that like sequence, or thinking like, not that judgments ever like matter, but it's like, you know, what did my parents think of me growing up? Did they expect me to be living how I am? Or like, what did I think of? Like when you kind of look in that kind of reflective, it's kind of like you've been given an opportunity to have, you know, a documentary on you, or a book where you're like looking back on your philosophy and your childhood. Like it's powerful. It's so powerful.
Fuck yeah. I think it's when you're able to reflect and you know, like what you said before, the dots connect backwards, and to recognize the importance of every little, what seemingly was an insignificant piece, and how it all fits into the larger puzzle. So the documentary will be coming out later this year, continuing studying. There's a lot on your plate. You got a lot on your plate. Look, I've really loved connecting with you, and you being someone in your mid-20s is still inspiring someone in their 40s. There's something about your story and about just your presence that is really energizing. So I've loved this conversation. Elise, thank you so much for jumping on.
Thanks so much for having me.